So, our goal today is just to share a helpful playbook for thinking about AI pricing for B2B companies. We're going to cover why AI pricing is so different and why traditional models don't always work. We'll walk you through a 5 step framework to help guide your thinking. We'll wrap up with a look at a matrix to help you manage those trade offs. And then lastly, we'll open it up for questions. So, let's dive in. So, in my time working with our AI users, I've seen them speak about kind of three main challenges when it comes to AI pricing. First, AIs often have complex value propositions. The benefit a customer gets often depends on the context. A user might perform the same action for a low stakes internal task versus a higher stakes revenue generating project. And even when using the same feature, the business impact can be completely different. And it makes it really challenging to set a single price that feels fair for all use cases. And then, second, as we all know, the variable underlying costs associated with AI products are highly correlated to usage. So every AI action costs real money to run. And I think this matters to AI companies because cost matters. And that cost has to be translated to value for the user. And then lastly, I think this is one that I know deeply and Kunal knows too. The landscape is just constantly evolving. An AI feature or a way of monetizing that is groundbreaking today could be standard a year from now or even a week from now. And this means that companies often need to adapt. So a key part of pricing generally is finding a model that not only feels fair but can also evolve gracefully over time. We also want to walk you through why some traditional models of monetization can be a tricky fit for AI companies. So, on one hand, pure flat rate classical subscriptions with those, casual users might feel like they're overpaying, while your business might be losing money on power users. That subscription model just doesn't work as well for scaling AI companies, which could be why we are seeing its usage shrink actually. So we recently ran a pretty comprehensive survey of over 2,000 global businesses. And across all of them, we found that only about 15% of companies are still relying on that pure subscription pricing model, which is wild. And then I think on the other hand, pure pay as you go can create meter anxiety, where the fear of a surprise bill can cause customers to hesitate and then just not explore the full value of the product.
That's right, Lily. A lot of the stage startups I've spoken with recently started with pure subscription model, mainly because one, it's easy to implement. Second, it's very easy to explain to the users. But they quickly moved away and added a usage-based component to it. On the flip side, I've also seen companies launch with pure pay-as-you-go models. However, they are prone to fraud and abuse. I was recently speaking with the founder, and they mentioned that bad actors were signing up with a virtual card and it would go through, and then they will deactivate it after racking a very large bill.
Yeah, and I think because of those trade-offs, we're seeing many companies move to a hybrid model that balances the predictability of a subscription with the fairness of paying for usage. And that same survey that we did, the data supports this concept. 56% of the AI companies we talk to already use a hybrid model, and 70% of all software companies are planning to adopt a usage component soon. So it's definitely something to think about. So I've been on a bit of a listening tour lately with all of the AI companies I support, and I ask them all the time, how did you choose your pricing model? A lot of them built something day one and just set it and forget it. Others kind of trialed all sorts of options and landed with what resonated most with their customers. And a lot of them said they just simply replicated what their competitors did. And I think no matter what, no matter how you got to your pricing model, it's important to be really thoughtful and just choose a model that's right for your business and is crafted based on the unique value you're providing. So, Kunal, you work with a lot of startups and larger businesses as well as they're thinking through their pricing model. Can you tell us a little bit about how you would think about going about pricing your AI agent?
Absolutely, Lily. I won't pretend to have all the answers here. We're all figuring this out together as the paradigm is quickly shifting. I do have a high level 5 point framework that is hopefully a good starting point. The first step here is to define your value metric. What is that? Essentially, this is a measure that quantifies the benefits your customer derive from your AI application. The important piece to note here that we are not talking about how customers use your product or how much it costs to serve them. You actually want to move away from that thinking. You actually want to focus on the value that they're getting. We often see it in a few categories, and there are a couple of them on the screen here. So, first, here is automation, where AI does a repetitive task and customers save on time and efficiency. That's your value. If you think of augmentation, AI can act like a co pilot, working with your users to improve the quality of their work. The value there is absolutely time savings, but not only that, it's also about getting better results.
Yeah, I like this approach a lot. I think an AI company could be thinking about deepening customer usage and therefore spend, but their customer is really just trying to understand how this AI tool can make their life better when they're making a purchasing decision. So that value metric needs to be abundantly clear to the customer at the time of, or at the start of purchase, rather.
Yeah, that's right. The one thing I should have mentioned and would like to caveat is that not all value metrics are easy to quantify or measure. For example, let's take a design tool. Imagine you have a tool that reduces the time it takes to iterate on designs, although measuring the time saving for the designer may be challenging. The value metric or the impact is on the team's workflow and productivity, so that itself is like very clear. So after you've defined the value metric, the next step is defining your charge metric. This metric defines the meter, if you will, on which your customer will be billed. This meter needs to align with the value metric as well as with your marginal costs. Let me dive a little bit deeper into this. So let's explain the alignment with the value metric a bit more. If you're a customer support software provider, and let's say your customer defines success as making the customer support team more efficient, then the charges should be based on the number of tickets resolved rather than arbitrary measure, let's say sending messages back and forth between the AI bot and the end customer. And then from a cost perspective, it is very important that the charge metric closely tracks your variable costs, especially as an AI company.
Yeah, I saw this recently with a kind of document analysis startup that I work with. They switched from charging per document process to charging per data point extracted. They felt like it better reflected both customer value and their own computational costs. And I think their customers immediately understood it because it tied directly to their ROI. So, a question you can ask yourself as you're kind of designing this is, does our value metric accurately reflect the true benefit customers receive from our product? So, Kunal, can you walk us through the most common metrics that we're seeing right now?
Yep. Uh, I would say they are essentially in three buckets, and they're here on the screen. The first one here is consumption based. So you're billing for the technical resources consumed. These are seen more in AI foundational model companies. They work best when your customer has full control over consumption. So an example here would be charging on the number of tokens consumed by a specific model. The second one here is workflow or work based. This is actually the most common in AI application companies. This is very effective when AI has significant control over executing the processes. As an example that you just mentioned, data points enriched. And then third, I would say is the outcome-based pricing. I'm sure you've heard of this. This is the holy grail because now what you've done is you've aligned the value metric to actually the charge metric. Having said that, it's not widely used outside of specific scenarios, such as customer support or lead generation. And why is that? So, two reasons. One is that not all customers will actually value the same outcomes. And then the second, which is actually the more important, attribution is really hard. It's hard to say, hey, my product is responsible for delivering that specific result.
Yeah, this all sounds much easier said than done, but I think you hit the nail on the head there, where the alignment of value metrics, charge metrics, and associated costs is so important and is kind of the main challenge here.
Yeah, I agree. This is easy for me to say, really hard in practice. But one cheat code we are seeing a lot of companies use is custom pricing unit credits. The analogy I use here is very similar to you walk into an arcade, you get a bunch of arcade coins, and then you can use them on different machines. This actually serves as a great abstraction layer for hiding away the technical complexity of the models, but still aligning with the underlying costs. Also, it allows you to quickly iterate. You can add new charges, you can change your charge metric while keeping the abstraction layer in place.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw this last week with a user who had who was successfully adopted an abstracted credit system. They charged based on the complexity of tasks and their underlying costs. So smaller edits might cost fewer credits than extensive rewrites. And now if they need to add a more expensive model that is now 10 times the costs, they can just have that, action consume 10 times more credits instead. And I also think there are some non AI focused industries that were, in a way, kind of pioneers of this concept. I'm sure in the last few years you saw your favorite workout booking platforms switch from, usage based on class units to a more abstract credit based booking system where some classes are worth more credits than others. It's no longer just one credit per class. And it's the same concept of needing to cover costs on the back end.
Great analogy here. Uh, so you have the charge metric now, you have the value metric. How do you think about choosing your model? At the highest level, you can think about it in three buckets: pure subscription, pure usage based, or a hybrid. You already talked about this, Lily. Pure models have a big trade off. Pure subscription don't align well, as an example, with AI's variable costs. So hybrid models are actually a great middle ground because it solves a lot of the challenges with the other two by combining them. So you have a predictable base fee, thing the MRR and ARR that your investors are very used to, and a scaling fee, the usage part that aligns price with the value the customers are receiving. But having said that, again, the hybrid might not be the right fit for you. And this leads me to the matrix that we have here. As with all options, there are always trade-offs to think about. The two axes we have there are actually helping you decide between two different things. One is financial predictability. That is, how predictable is your revenue from a customer? And the other one is the friction to the user. How easy it is for them to get started and then grow with your product. Again, the goal here isn't to say one quadrant is the best. Just point out that let's be intentional about the experience you're creating. So, do you want to maximize adoption, even it means less predictability? Then pay as you go model could work. Even an auto top up model might be a good option. Or maybe your business is in a high trust environment, selling to enterprise customers, and user friction is not at all a problem. Then a commitment model or a flat fee, platform fee with an included entitlement might work really well for you.
Yeah, I think those are all great points, Kunal. And this aligns well with what I've seen in the market. I think early stage AI companies that I support have led with the pre purchase credit approach because it has a really low barrier to entry. And it's nice as they try to solidify product market fit. Margin is almost guaranteed to be protected there. And then I think on the other hand, the flat fee and overage with usage caps is the one that I see and recommend most for AI companies that do have that product market fit and are kind of actively scaling. The subscription revenue is reliable, predictable, and they can also protect margin on power users and let them go deep because they have a charge metric that translates really well to value.
And that's a perfect segue to guardrails because when you introduce overage, you also bring in some variability.
Yeah, absolutely. And because guardrails essentially help manage that usage, it protects companies and their customers from surprises.
Yep, exactly. And there are three that we have seen that are really effective. Number one here on the screen is usage caps. Essentially, you cut off access to the product once a user has racked up a certain amount of usage or spend. The second one is automated notifications. In this case, the users can set up a limit and then you send a proactive notification saying, hey, this is how much you have consumed during this period. And then finally, there's rate limiting. These three are trying to solve the same thing. These give customers a peace of mind by ensuring that there are no surprise bills and also protecting your service from overuse by either a single power user or a bad actor.
Yeah, absolutely. And from conversations I've had with some of our users, I think guardrails just tend to boost trust and customer retention. Users generally feel safer when there are good guardrails in place. Kind of a bad metaphor, but it's kind of like a harness for rock climbers. I've had a few users launch without rules, and they paid the price either with kind of a mountain of failed payments and a big bill to foot, or with a very unhappy power user that wasn't aware of the implications of that power usage.
I actually think that's a great metaphor, Lily. Uh, which leads me to the last point. Remember, your pricing strategies is never really finished. Your first model is always going to be a hypothesis. So, what is really important here is to keep it simple. Make sure you have designed the system in a way that it can be adapted very easily, and then to continuously iterate based on customer feedback. Exactly how you would do with your product. You get customer feedback and you iterate. That's how I would recommend doing this here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, Kunal. Our research shows that people are treating like their pricing like products. 73% of companies that we surveyed have changed their pricing model two or more times in the last few years. So iterating is not just a good idea; it's really a must to keep up.
Frankly, that number always shocks me. If you were to ask me this 2 to 3 years back, I would have said users were changing the price maybe once every 2 to 3 years. So this is really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a new horizon for monetization for sure. All right, that was a lot of great information. To boil it down for you all, there were four main points that we want you to walk away with. First, make sure to anchor your price in value, not cost. Second, a hybrid model with strong guardrails can be super effective. Third, define your charge metric clearly in ways that your customers easily understand. And finally, treat your pricing like a product that you are constantly iterating on.
That's a great summary, Lily. Thank you for doing that. As you can see, there's really no single right answer, but hopefully this discussion gives you at least a starting point here.
Yep, absolutely. And with that, let's move on to the audience Q&A portion of the event. Some of you submitted questions ahead of time, so we will answer as many of those as we can. And if you have a live question for us, please drop it in the chat and our experts will do their best to respond to you.
Okay, Lily, I'm going to pick this first question for you.
Perfect.
How should you think about annual fee versus monthly pricing?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think that comes up all of the time. I think there's no single right answer here. It's always a trade off. So I would say monthly plans are great for lowering the barrier to entry. It's definitely less commitment. So it's easier for a new customer to say yes. But on the other hand, annual plans are good for your business because they provide better cash flow and reduce churn. But I think honestly, what I would say is the most common and effective approach we see is just to offer both. Offer a small discount on an annual plan to give them a compelling reason to commit long term, but still offer the monthly option. And then I think one thing I will say simplicity, in my opinion, is less about the billing interval and just more about making sure you have a clear value based charge metric. The rest of the details, like billing interval, those are table stakes, and you'll hear from your customers directly about which interval makes the most sense to them. All right, moving along here, Kunal, I'm going to pick one for you. This is a good one. What are the different approaches to combining seats with usage-based pricing?
This is actually a great question. So, if you think about combining usage based pricing with seats, there are primarily two approaches. One is pooled usage, and one is unpooled usage. Uh, Digging into that a bit more, pool usage, here the usage allowance is shared across all the seats. Let's say you have 10 GB of storage per user, total is 100 GB, everyone can use that. Then there's unpooled usage where each seat has its own allowance. So Lily has 10 GB, I get 10 GB, and but we can't use each other's quotas. Unpooled usage is usually combined with a pool of usage that can be purchased at the company level, so a power user can actually use that. Personally, I'm not a big fan of unpooled usage, as there will be a lot of users who are under the quota, and now you have to buy additional credits for the power users. And frankly, a lot of the goals that unpooled usage is trying to get to, for example, making sure that individual seats don't consume too much, that can still be enforced with pooled usage through putting thresholds. Let me pick another question for you, Lily. This one is good. For a very early stage startups, still discovering product market fit, we might not have enough data to know what customers really value most. How would a founder approach this framework when the value proposition itself is still a hypothesis?
Yeah, this one is tough. I think being early stage and still discovering product market fit is generally a hard time to input to put pricing in place. So I think I'd first focus on gathering meaningful utilization data to really just understand how your customers derive value from your product and before jumping right into pricing. There's a lot of customer conversations to be had and just generally analysis to be done before jumping right into pricing. I think that introducing pricing too early without understanding that specific value could erode user trust and complicate your path to real product market fit. Um, but to keep things simple, you could follow the 15% of companies that are just using a simple subscription model and then just closely analyze feature usage to build hypotheses around, potential good value-based charge metric. You'll definitely need to keep margin in mind at this early stage, especially for AI products where each interaction carries real costs. But that is where good rules and Kunal's guardrail advice comes in. And then I think for if margin is paramount, which it should be for a lot of you, I'd go for that prepaid credit model in the bottom left of the quadrant that we shared. You don't need to use an abstracted charge metric, and you can just charge directly on usage and margin as you figure out your value. All right, one last question here, and this one's for you, Kunal. For usage-based pricing to work, our customers will demand billing transparency. I'm most interested to know how Stripe can help us deliver this in a simple way.
Again, a great question. The crux of this question is that usage based billing is complicated. It's no longer $20 per month. So, to drive transparency, there are a couple of things to consider here. One is the invoicing. Having an invoice that clearly breaks down the usage into line items is very important. And to that end, having a solution that is really configurable so that you can make the invoice more readable is important. For example, with Stripe, you can define how to group line items or create a summary. And then the second thing is customer facing dashboards are really powerful. This is where you actually show the usage and spend to your end customers. You can use Stripe's usage analytics APIs to power a customer facing dashboard, credits balance summary API to show remaining credits, and we have a paid usage API that we're building right now that you can use to show spend. So combining these two things, you can make usage based billing actually very simple for the user, and it doesn't need to be that complex.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Kunal. So that is all the time we have for today. Thank you again for joining us. We appreciate your time and interest.